Hey guys, today I wanted to talk a little bit about inquiry, and this is in contrast to meditation. I want to say right off the bat that they aren't necessarily actually completely separate. So, like many things, like our body and our mind, like spirit and matter, they aren't really different, but it can be helpful for us to think of them as separate and to sometimes approach them separately. So, what is inquiry? Well, like I said, it's not really separate from meditation. I think it happens in meditation spontaneously a lot of times, but it might be helpful for you to think of it separately in your practice sometimes. So, why would you use inquiry? I'd say if you were meditating and something is persistent, something keeps coming up for you, maybe a memory or a thought, or very often, I think, especially for maybe the more experienced meditators, it's just a feeling. It's just a feeling, maybe an uneasiness, or could be something that you're just an emotion that keeps coming up. It could also be a physical sensation. I think this can actually work sometimes with physical sensations. And I do want to say that nothing is 100% and nothing is the same for everyone. So you need to take these instructions and apply them and see how they work for you. Okay. So if something keeps coming up, and a good way to approach this is, I think, a baseline that we want to think about for our existence is peace, love, and joy. So we want to really experience these things even in the midst of our daily challenges and the, what we can say hardships or challenges, however you want to think of it. This has been my experience that even if things are not going your way, like right now, my car broke down. I'm looking at maybe having to get a new car, and that's a payment that I can't really afford. Um, there's still a underlying sense of peace and joy at even being able to experience this. Again, a question we can ask is, why is there something instead of nothing? So if we just want to experience absolute nothingness, then we don't have to worry about cars. We don't have to worry about car payments. We don't have to worry about work. But we're here, and I think most of us feel that we actually would rather have these challenges than experience absolute nothingness. Um, so that's just one way of looking at it. And so the challenges of life, the things that we have to deal with, um, they are not exclusive to what I'm talking about. So the joy, the peace, the bliss, we still want to feel that. So sometimes we feel cut off from that, and that's a very real human experience. And that can become very acute in meditation or meditating, and we really feel something strong or heavy coming up. So, something persistent like that, every time I sit down and meditate, I feel a constriction somewhere or a thought keeps coming up. First thing to realize is that the thought always has a corollary in the body. If it's a troubling thought, the only way you know it's a troubling thought is it's disturbing the peace in your body somewhere. Okay, so there's a constriction or tightness, restriction or pain somewhere in your body, and you need to go and find that. So if you're caught up here, which a lot of beginning meditators are, they're worried about work. I'm worried about, well, this is going to happen. What am I going to do about my car, right? That's my situation I'm in right now. If I were caught in a sort of a thought loop, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to pay this. I'm not going to be able to do this. What am I going to do about this and that? Um, then I'm not going to realize that actually what's disturbing about those thoughts is the way they feel in my body. This is a very important first step, is realize that there's two parts, even to a thought. Sometimes it just feels like an emotion, and it doesn't drive a thought stream. But more often than not, the thought streams we have um, are driven by something we feel inside of our body. And if we don't find that, it just continues to fuel the thought stream. Nothing is absolute, so this is just one way of thinking of what's going on. So we find that tension in our body. And then the difference between inquiry and meditation is just creating space for that. So you sit down, you're not trying to make anything happen, you're not trying to be spiritual, you're not trying to become a Buddha, you're not trying. Okay, and so that's a very important step to understand too about what I teach in terms of meditation. Meditation is where you let go of the wheel. It is the one time during your day, hopefully, where you are not trying to manipulate what is or change what is. But this is where I'm saying maybe there's you can create a difference between what you consider your meditation practice and what you consider inquiry. So something keeps coming up in meditation, you're letting it be there, it's not going away. So maybe you need to investigate a little closer. So in your mind, you can say, okay, I'm going to put aside the meditation where I'm just sort of allowing everything to come in. And now I'm going to look closer at this thing. And usually that's feeling more, allowing yourself to dive down and experience more deeply something. And you might have a question about it. You might there might be an inquiry of, what is this, or something along those lines. What do you want me to see, or what is the nature of something? Right? We might be dealing with grief, so we might be wondering, well, what is underneath grief? What's the root of that really? And so we go in there maybe with a question, but we don't want to let our intellect answer. The answer doesn't come from the future or from the past. And this is another very important point, that we can use inquiry when we are being troubled by something. But again, we need to put the story aside. So let's take my current example. Oh, I'm worried about my car. I'm worried about this. So if I'm not aware, if I'm not awake, then I believe that's what's troubling me. And if someone says, what's wrong, Doug? I say, oh, my car, this, that. That's not actually what's bothering me. What would actually be, I'm not actually bothered, but let's just say that I were. What would actually be bothering me would be how I was feeling when I believed those thoughts, or when I thought that the story I was creating was true. Okay? So I need to put the story aside. Sometimes that's enough. I put the story aside and the feelings go away. Sometimes. But a lot of times, for me anyway, I put the story aside and there's still something going on there. And so you begin to see that it's this contraction or something in the body that's actually driving those thoughts. And so you dive down into that, and you take a deeper look at that. And again, you might have a question and you might articulate that intellectually, but then you need to put your thoughts aside and put aside the story, and the mind's going to try and figure it out intellectually, and you need to sort of tell it that that's not what this is about. And so you let go of the thoughts, you create space, which again, you only really know how to do with experience with meditation. Usually this is the case, because most people say you put aside your thoughts, they don't know how to do that. You say create space in your mind, they don't know how to do that. There's just too much going on. So we need to have that ability to create some space to let things be as they are, and yet to focus in on something very acutely. And so again, I don't feel that this is completely separate from meditation, but this can be a useful practice to have if, again, something keeps coming up for you in meditation. Because meditation, again, generally the way I'm teaching you is I want you to really not try and manipulate things. Don't say that something needs to change or something needs to go away. But I do feel that there can be a lot of benefit to looking more closely at something that keeps arising. Um, and you want to be careful about looking at it with the idea of trying to make it go away, because it may not go away, and it may not need to go away. We may not like it. We may not understand why it's part of our experience, but it's very important to recognize we don't actually know. Okay, so sitting down, meditating, I feel like something is between me and peace and joy, um, and a sense of contentment and feeling that innate love of life. Then I can ask, well, what is that? Again, my first answer might be, oh, my car's broken. I need to do that. Okay, let's put that story aside, because some people have that story and they're not bothered by it. All right, that's actually where I am. They still feel that peace and bliss. So, okay, I've got this story, but in this moment, really, what is the problem? The problem is that I don't feel good in my body somewhere. I'm feeling a constriction. We often call these emotions, right? Oh, I feel angry or I feel upset. Well, we need to get a little more surgical with our awareness and realize that actually an emotion is just a constriction in my viscera, in my organs inside of my body. I have a lot of nerves running up from the viscera to the brain. So there's a lot of communication happening from inside of the body to the brain. The brain interprets that as anger or sadness or grief or jealousy. That's what we've been taught, right? As little kids, our parents, oh, are you angry? Are you upset? Are you sad? So we learn to put these labels on things and to call them emotions. But that's basically just because the world is asleep and our parents were asleep. They didn't know that an emotion was a constriction inside of their body. And again, it can have a mental component as well. These things aren't clinically separated. It's just a way of talking to try and understand things, to sort of break things apart a little bit so we can get more awareness and we can work with these things so that we can really enjoy our daily life. So I hope that's helpful, guys. Again, um, we don't necessarily want to replace that non-doing of meditation with constant inquiry. So we want to have a time where we're just letting everything be as it is so that things can come up. And as we inquire very often, we can unwind what in yoga called samskaras. These are these psychological impressions in our body. Sometimes they unwind very quickly. Sometimes it's very slow, or it seems like not at all. Sometimes we get answers to questions. So again, you can ask questions in inquiry. And this is a way of sometimes getting knowledge and insight. Again, it doesn't come from your mind. It's not coming from your intellect, which is going to look into the past or look into the future and try and put two and two together, right? Oh, this happened, so maybe this and da da da. That's one kind of we could say knowledge or information, but this isn't what we're trying to do. So we want to put those answers that come from the mind aside, and we create space and we let the answer come to us if it wants to, right? If it's ready to come up. And so, yeah, you can think of that as almost like a separate practice. That if in meditation or in your life something just keeps coming up and you feel like, okay, this maybe needs to be looked at or addressed more deeply, hopefully this will be a way that you can do that. You enter into meditation and then you really try and focus in more on something specific, try and really feel that, and then maybe there are some questions that you have. What is this, and how deep does this go, and what is around it, what is causing it, and then again we just sort of wait for the answer. And you could make that a separate practice from your meditation. So you could have part of your time where you're sitting with that very broad, unmanipulative um, awareness, where you're just letting everything be there. And then you can maybe spend some of your time in inquiry. Again, I think inquiry happens naturally in meditation when we find there's some density or constriction in our being. Once we've created some space, which can take a long time, but once we've done that, we can then say, oh, well, there's something going on here. And then we might naturally just move into that and look closer at that. Um, and so that's what I'm calling here inquiry. And again, we can actually have questions that we go into inquiry with. And in the same way, we just create space for that answer. So I hope that was helpful, guys. Let me know if there's any questions. And Jai Bhagwan.